Today we will be discussing how to douche with fresh wheatgrass juice and the benefits of drinking it orally. You don't need to be afraid. You can handle this, and here's how you do it.
The Ask Dr. Mom Show.
Welcome to the Ask Dr. Mom Show, episode 20. This is our third episode in our three-part series on infertility. In part one, we discussed diet, charting, and herbal supplements. In part two, we went into the slant board routine and cleansing and nourishing the female organs. In part three, we are going to go into a section that really kind of sets some people off. So before I get into too many details on this, I'm going to tell you how I actually discovered this piece of it. This piece of it originally was not part of what I did with women who were dealing with infertility. But through an experience of my own, I accidentally stumbled onto this. And so now, for the very few women who have gone through what we discussed in episode one and episode two, and they still haven't achieved a pregnancy, then this is where we pull out the big guns.
Oh, wow. I'm excited. This has been very informative.
The way I discovered this was years ago. I was bleeding to death with uterine fibroids.
Wow.
And my life was extremely busy. I still had a lot of children at home. I had a very active midwife practice. I was lecturing, and so life was just on a go basis.
Yeah.
And the last thing in the world I ever thought about was taking care of me.
Yeah.
And
you were
so,
too busy telling everybody else how to take care of themselves.
That's right. In fact, my husband told me once that I was like a plumber who never fixes his own pipes. and that's very apropos in this particular instance. So anyway, I'm going along and I'm bleeding / hemorrhaging, but I'm just dealing with it and trying to keep going and take care of things.
Goodness.
And one day, my midwife office was on the second floor, and I ran up these stairs to get something out of my office. And when I got to the top of the stairs, I was completely, totally out of breath. I was literally leaning on the banister, just. And in my mind, I'm thinking, my gosh, I cannot be this out of shape.
Right.
I'm
This
on the
isn't
go
normal.
all the time.
Yeah.
This is not normal. And then it clicked. And I thought, maybe when I get in there, I should check my blood. Because, when I would do my midwifery checkups, one of the things that I always did was check women's blood, take a drop of blood to make sure that they're not becoming anemic.
Right.
So I got in there, I checked mine, it would not even register.
Oh, wow.
And so I went down to the ER to a friend of mine and had them run my hematocrit. Now, a normal hematocrit runs between about 25 and 35.
Okay.
And if you get anywhere around 25, they start talking about doing transfusions.
So now 25 and 35 what? What's that measurement?
It's just the scale
Okay.
that they use to check
Okay.
how much iron is in your blood,
Okay.
red blood cells. And when they ran mine at that point, it was about a 20.
Wow.
So I was already well below the point where they typically are going to start looking at transfusions.
Yeah.
And before I fixed the problem, it actually ended up much lower than that.
Oh, wow.
So anyway, to jump ahead in this story, one Saturday night, I hemorrhaged pretty bad. And so Sunday morning, my husband said, all right, we're done with this. I'm taking you into the emergency room. We're going to find out what's going on. You can take care of it any way you want to take care of it, but at least we'll know what the problem is.
Right.
So I was taken into the emergency room. They ran all their tests, and then the doctor came in and he said, "You have uterine fibroids. You are bleeding to death."
Because up until that point, you didn't know why.
No, I didn't. I really thought I just had a severe hormone imbalance.
Oh, wow.
Or I was premenopausal or something.
Yeah.
You know, I really didn't stop to even evaluate it. I just kept going.
Yeah.
And so he said, "You will come in tomorrow for a hysterectomy,
Oh, wow.
or you will bleed to death." There is no ifs, ands, or buts about this.
It was so severe.
It was so severe. And he said, "And you will have to come in early to receive a transfusion before we can even take you into surgery."
Oh, wow.
And so I started saying, well, aren't there,
Other options?
isn't there an alternative to this? Can't we fix? No. You will come in tomorrow for a hysterectomy, or you will bleed to death. Those are your only two choices. So on the drive home, my husband turned to me and he said, "You're not going to get the surgery, are you?"
No.
And I said, "No,
Yeah.
I can't." And I don't have time in these episodes, you know, to go into all the reasons why.
Right.
But just to make it very concise, I had several children and my husband who were not happy with me. And my children pointed out that this was not the time to be making a point,
Right.
Or-
taking a stand or.
trying to get on your soapbox or whatever. And they said, "Look, we'd rather have you without a uterus than to not have you at all. So let's not be ridiculous. Just go get it done."
Right.
Well, there's a whole lot that goes into this, but the
Right.
bottom line for me was I had already spent a decade of being a part of and witnessing what I considered to just be miracles. By learning how to use the herbs and the oils and hydrotherapy and energy and just all of these incredible gifts that have been left here by our Creator for us. And I had seen so many miraculous things happen. And I literally felt like if I took the easy way out and got the surgery, I would lose the light I had been given. And I literally was at a point in my life where I told my husband and my children, you know, if you were facing the same decision, whatever you decided, you know that I would be there to support you.
Right.
And I hope that you will choose to do the same thing for me, because I can't do this. I would rather die with the knowledge I have been given, the light and knowledge, than I would to have it taken away. And I said, the truth is, I'm not a victim. I am in this position because I did not take care of myself.
Yeah.
I have not lived by the laws of health, and now I'm suffering the consequences. I caused this, and I will fix it. Now, please don't think that I am saying to anyone else who is bleeding to death,
Right. That's the solution for them.
that's right.
But you knew this was
But it
the
was
solution
for
you.
me. This
Yeah.
is what I had to do. So anyway, for the next couple of days, I actually did have a near-death experience because I was kind of hovering between the worlds. And for the next couple of days, I was so weak that I literally could barely get from my bed into the bathroom. So I never left those two rooms. And I really wasn't sure what I was going to do about this. My oldest daughter came to stay with us because I was in such bad shape. And so here's the plan we laid out. I told my daughter, I said, do not bring me anything to eat or drink that is not alive.
Right.
So nothing cooked, nothing processed, no junk. And I said, every morning I want you to bring me 2 ounces of fresh wheatgrass juice to drink. Ann Wigmore, when she studied wheatgrass and did so much good for so many people with it, one of the things that she discovered is that the molecular structure of wheatgrass juice is identical to the molecular structure of our blood, except for the red corpuscles that we make in the marrow of our bones.
Oh, wow.
So when you take in pure wheatgrass juice, it builds really strong, healthy blood quickly. It's almost like giving yourself a transfusion.
Yeah.
So
Stronger than chlorophyll. Because isn't chlorophyll always, because that's high in iron.
chlorophyll is also a really, and basically that's what wheatgrass juice is just
Okay.
pure chlorophyll.
Okay.
But when you get the fresh wheatgrass juice, it's just much more potent than buying a bottle of chlorophyll.
Okay.
So I asked her to bring me 2 ounces in the morning and 2 ounces at night. Then I asked her, I said, at bedtime, I want you to juice a whole flat of wheatgrass juice and bring it to me. Now, depending on the moisture in your flat, you're going to get anywhere from probably 4 to 7 ounces of wheatgrass juice. So every evening before bed, I would, like we talked in the last episode, I would put 4 or 5 folded bath towels in the bathtub. I would get into that slant board position, and I would douche with this fresh wheatgrass juice. I would stay in that position for 15 to 20 minutes, and I would take the castor oil that we talked about in our last episode and do that abdominal massage, which pulled the wheatgrass juice up into the uterus. Within 3 days,
And you were doing that every night.
I did it every night for 2 weeks.
Okay.
By the 3rd day, the bleeding stopped. On about the 10th day, I passed some tissue. I continued to do this every night for 2 weeks. At the end of that 2 weeks, I had a gynecologist, an OBGYN, that used to back me up in my midwife practice.
Yeah.
He knew that I was in trouble.
Yeah.
And so he called and said, would you please come in for a checkup so that I can
Right.
just reassure myself that you're still alive and functioning. So after the 2 weeks of doing what I had been doing, the live diet, drinking the wheatgrass juice, douching with the wheatgrass juice, I went in to see him. His nurse took some blood, ran my hematocrit, and she actually came into the office where he, or the exam room where he was with me, and she said, our machine must be broken.
Oh, no.
And he said, why is that?
Yeah.
And of course, he'd known me for years. He said, why is that? And she said, because according to this, her hematocrit is a 25.
Yeah.
Now, you and I both know that as low as she got,
That's impossible.
it's impossible. It would take 6 months to a year with transfusions
to build it back up.
to build it back up. And
And
he,
it had been a couple weeks.
oh
a few
yeah,
weeks.
yeah. And he just smiled at her and he said, you just have no idea what she has in her little bag of tricks. He said, I'm sure the machine is fine.
Yeah.
Now, remember, a 25 is very low normal.
Right.
But at least I was back in the normal zone. So anyway, he did his exam. Of course, I'm fine. The point to the story is this. After I had done that, I actually fell into a normal 28-day cycle with a very normal 3 to 5 day period. And I continued to do that clear up to the age of 60.
Wow.
I also began passing fertility fluid, which is part of what we talked about in part 1, like I was 20 years old. So, and I think at the time this happened, I was somewhere around 45, 46, something like that. So I discovered that this literally regenerated
Yeah.
my female organs, especially the uterus. So after I discovered that, when I have worked with people who have infertility problems and they go through everything we talked about in episode 1 and everything we talked about in episode 2, and they still have not achieved a pregnancy,
They still need a more aggressive treatment.
Then I tell them what I did for 2 weeks and strongly suggest that they do the same. And up until this point in time, to my knowledge, everyone who has followed all of these steps that we have talked about, with the exception of one dear friend who was up in her 40s, with that one exception, everyone who has followed all of these steps has been able to achieve a pregnancy.
Wow.
And so it is my sincere hope, as we end part 3 of this series, it is my sincere hope that any of you who are dealing with the heartbreak of infertility, that these suggestions and examples will be helpful in your life, and that you will be able to obtain a pregnancy and know the joy of giving birth and becoming a mother. This has been the Ask Dr. Mom Show. I'm Sandra Ellis, here with Alicia Decker. Thank you so much for joining us.